The jungle exploded with gunfire. North Vietnamese troops had sprung their trap, pouring fire from the ridges above onto a hatchet force of American MACV-SOG operators and their Montagnard allies. Outnumbered, outgunned, and hemmed in by the high ground, the Americans were supposed to be crushed. But one man refused to bend. Staff Sergeant Jerry M. Shriver, known to comrades and enemies alike as Mad Dog, moved like a ghost through the chaos. Thin and wiry, his face sharp with tension, he dashed from tree to tree with a predator's calm. Where most soldiers carried a single rifle, Shriver was armed like a walking arsenal. Pistols strapped to his chest and belt, revolvers jammed into pockets, and a sawed-off shotgun hanging low, ready to thunder at close range. As wounded men were winched skyward through the canopy, Shriver stayed below, fighting with every weapon within reach. Bullets snapped through leaves around him, machine gun fire raked the clearing, but he answered with cold precision. Time and again he keyed the radio, calling for air support, shifting the fires, keeping the enemy at bay. When the last of his men was lifted out, Shriver remained, alone, defiant, surrounded. The radio operator, hearing the storm of gunfire, begged him to hold on. A fresh unit was ready to move in and pull him out. Shriver's voice came back calm, almost amused. No, no. I've got them right where I want them, surrounded from the inside. It was pure Mad Dog, half humor, half challenge, all steel. Jerry Michael Shriver was born September 24, 1941, in the small town of Defuniak Springs, Florida. He grew up in the shadow of World War II, surrounded by the tales of American men who had stormed beaches, parachuted into Europe, and fought island to island across the Pacific. Those stories carved themselves into the young boy's imagination. He wanted in. As soon as he was old enough, Shriver enlisted. He began his career in California and quickly proved himself. He breezed through airborne school and joined the legendary 101st Airborne Division, the Screaming Eagles. But for Shriver, airborne wings weren't enough. He craved more. He tested for the Green Berets, endured the brutal training, and emerged with the coveted beret, marking him as one of America's special forces. It was the perfect timing for a man like Shriver. The Cold War was turning hot in Southeast Asia. France had been beaten by the Viet Minh in 1954, and now America had taken its place, determined to hold the line against communism. Vietnam was a conflict unlike anything the U.S. Army had fought before. The jungles swallowed men whole, and the enemy seemed endless. The Army needed operators who could survive alone, wage unconventional war, and bleed the enemy where it hurt most. Shriver was exactly that man, and Vietnam would become his hunting ground.
In 1966, Staff Sergeant Shriver arrived in Vietnam with the 5th Special Forces. He cut a striking figure. Tall, lean, his eyes flat and cold, always ready for the next fight. Future Medal of Honor recipient Jim Fleming would describe him years later as the quintessential warrior loner, antisocial, possessed by what he was doing, the best teammate, always training, constantly training. Shriver had little patience for outsiders. He lived for combat and the men he led. To his teammates, he was harsh, not out of arrogance, but because he wanted them honed into survivors. He spent his off hours checking weapons, studying terrain, drilling his montagnards, and preparing for the next patrol. Fleming put it bluntly. Shriver convinced me that for the rest of my life I would not go into a bar and cross someone I didn't know. The man was a storm contained in human form. At the NCO club, he often sat alone, drinking a case of beer in silence, waiting for the next mission. It was here that he earned his name. After mission upon mission, the legend of Mad Dog grew. He fought with reckless intensity, often joining patrols, even when he was supposed to be resting. When given leave for R&R, he skipped the comforts of Saigon or Bangkok. Instead, he went straight to another Special Forces camp, looking to join any team headed out into the jungle. Combat was his addiction, and he wanted more. The enemy noticed. Before long, Radio Hanoi put a bounty on his head. $10,000 for Jerry Shriver, dead or alive. Mad Dog wore the name like a badge. If you saw Shriver before a mission, You'd never mistake him for a regulation soldier. Where most carried the standard CAR-15 or M16, Shriver dismissed them as too long. He favored pistols, revolvers, and close-range weapons that fit his brutal, in-your-face style of combat. It wasn't uncommon to see him step off with half a dozen sidearms strapped to his frame. Captain Jim Storter recalled one debrief at MACV-SOG's Command and Control North. He had pistols stuck everywhere on him. I mean, he had 5 or 6.38 caliber revolvers. Storter asked, baffled, "Sergeant Shriver, would you like a CAR-15 or M16 or something? You know the DMZ is not a real mellow area." Mad Dog just grinned. "No, those long guns will get you in trouble. And besides, if I need more than these, I got troubles anyhow." His arsenal was as unpredictable as he was. A sawed-off shotgun, a suppressed World War II-era M3 grease gun, even a .45 caliber Thompson. Once, he bought a Marlin lever-action chambered in the massive .444 cartridge. It wasn't for hunting bears. It was for shredding bunkers and terrifying the enemy. Off-duty, he could be just as eccentric. Shriver would sometimes stroll around base in a blue velvet smoking jacket and derby hat, pistols hidden beneath the fabric. Always armed, always on edge, always waiting for the next fight. More than any weapon, Shriver loved his men, especially the Montagnards, the fiercely independent tribesmen of Vietnam's Highlands. They hated the communists, fought with uncanny jungle skills, and followed Mad Dog with unshakable loyalty. Shriver returned that loyalty tenfold. He lived among them, ate in their huts, slept in their barracks. He spent much of his own pay on food, clothes, and supplies for their families. He also had one constant companion, a German shepherd named Klaus, adopted in Taiwan. Klaus followed him everywhere, and Shriver loved him like a brother. When some NCOs once forced beer down the dog's throat as a prank, Shriver stormed into the club with his .38 revolver drawn. No one dared step forward. Klaus remained at his side until the end. By 1969, 3 years and more than 1,000 days in combat had worn Shriver thin. He considered leaving, but he couldn't abandon his Montagnards and their families. He sensed his time was running out, but still he fought on. On April 24, 1969, a MACV-SOG company launched a raid on the airfield at Quan, 20 miles from the enemy's central office in South Vietnam. B-52s had pulverized the site, and now it was Mad Dog's turn to finish the job. Before boarding the Huey, Shriver handed Klaus to a friend and said quietly, "Take care of my boy." It was a farewell. The mission unraveled immediately. One helicopter failed and turned back, leaving Shriver's platoons short-handed. As soon as they landed, enemy machine guns erupted from concealed bunkers. Shriver realized they were surrounded by 6 platoons of NVA regulars. He keyed the radio. His men were pinned, and he would flank the enemy himself. Then he moved. Charging into the storm with an Uzi in hand, grenades at his belt, and Montagnards at his side, Mad Dog led from the front. Bullets tore the air. Grenades shook the ground, but he never slowed. His men watched him nod, smile grimly, and hurl grenades into the tree line before surging into the bunkers. Jerry Mad Dog Shriver was never seen again. Hanoi broadcast propaganda claiming his capture and execution, but no proof was ever offered. Weeks later, cleanup teams scoured the battlefield. They found bodies, but not his. Shriver was 3 weeks from the end of his 3rd tour. He was 27 years old. The Army listed him as missing in action. In 1974, with no body ever recovered, His file was closed. He was posthumously awarded a second Silver Star and promoted to Master Sergeant. Over his career, he had earned Silver Star twice, Soldier's Medal for heroism, Bronze Star with 2 oak leaf clusters and 4 Valor devices, Air Medal, Purple Heart, several Army Commendation Medals. But medals never defined him. Shriver left behind little more than a few dollars, a velvet smoking jacket, and his shepherd Klaus. What remains is the legend of the man who once laughed at death itself and said, "I've got them right where I want them, surrounded from the inside."